Let me introduce you to our next guest joining us here in Washington, Congressman Pete Hoekstra, the ranking Republican member on the Intelligence Committee. And Mr. Hoekstra, the New York Times editorial, the lead editorial today, what Mr. Obama said and didn't say at the UN yesterday. What he didn't say, according to the paper, there was one large gap. Mr. Obama said almost nothing about Afghanistan, which just a month ago he called a war of necessity, fundamental to American security and to the broader fight against terrorism. We learned from the Washington Times that General McChrystal is set to request as many as 40,000 additional troops for Afghanistan. You've been in this town a long time and watching White Houses for a long time. What are we seeing happening with this discussion about the McChrystal strategy and the way the White House has been positioning it the last few days?
Well, it's actually it's very surprising. I mean, back in March, the president laid out a very clear strategy, a counterinsurgency strategy for Afghanistan, saying this is, the evolution of a strategy, the Bush administration, to this counterinsurgency. Last month he said, this is a war of necessity. Now he's going to be faced with the challenge, if it's a war of necessity, is he's going to do what is necessary to allow this strategy to be successful. And, to go to the UN and to be in front of all of our allies, our partners who are helping us in Afghanistan, and really not address the issue and really not confront and discuss the major issue that America and the world is dealing with today, and that's the threat from terrorism, Al-Qaeda and radical jihadists, is a glaring vacuum in that speech yesterday.
We see in a number of analyses, and here's one of them in the Wall Street Journal, that it's the conduct of the election in Afghanistan that is underlying the White House's revisiting or hesitation on the strategy there. Would you comment on that?
Well, it may be what's underlying it, but to be shocked that there was corruption or irregularities in the Afghan election shouldn't have surprised anybody. I mean, this is a country that's, evolving down a path towards some type of representative government, not well experienced in elections, and for them to have expected that they might have an American-style election or a European-style election with very limited irregularities or anything like that, and to now come back and say, well, we've got to go back and rethink our total strategy because of the irregularities in this election. It's kind of like, no, we knew that this would happen. We knew that these kinds of problems would be existing and would show themselves in this election.
We welcome your calls and questions and comments about U.S. policy toward Afghanistan. The phone numbers are right below us on the screen. We'll get to your calls. You can also send us an email or a question or comment by Twitter, and we'll mix all of those in this discussion. What are your observations about Hamid Karzai?
I've been to Afghanistan 5 different occasions. I think that the most important thing that I see when I go to Afghanistan is that whether it's Hamid Karzai or whoever else is the president of Afghanistan, is that they are the president of a very small region. They are the president of Kabul, and that the ability of the presidency to project control, authority, and power over the rest of the country is very, very limited. And so whether it's Hamid Karzai, whether it is somebody else, whoever moves into the office of the president, it's going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for them to bring a unifying effort into the process and to bring Afghanistan under the control of a central government that will set the tone and tenor for that whole country. It's still very much a tribal society.
Vice President Biden has been vocal over the past week suggesting a strategy that might focus more on Al-Qaeda as opposed to the Taliban. That's really the heart of this debate here. Comment on the off-lead in the New York Times today. U.S. says Taliban uses Pakistan layer to widen attacks.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I've been on the border, both sides. I've been on both sides of that border, at the border, both Pakistan and Afghanistan. It's really not a border. A border, you would think there'd be some demarcation, some controls. It's very easy to cross that border undetected. And what you have is that, if we put the focus on Afghanistan, the planning, the preparing for attacks will take care. If you're attacking in Afghanistan, the planning and the preparation will take place in Pakistan. If we move our focus to Pakistan, then the planning and the preparation will take place in Afghanistan. You need a focused effort on both. Regarding the vice president's strategy of saying, we're going to focus on Al Qaeda, we're not going to focus on the Taliban. Just recognize again how quickly the Taliban will provide a safe haven to Al Qaeda, like they did 10, 15 years ago in Afghanistan. They will do it again. They will provide a safe haven. If we just focus on Al Qaeda, let the Taliban grow their presence and their strength in Afghanistan, they will provide a home for Al Qaeda again.
Tactically, how successful is the U.S. military at a counterinsurgency?
Well, I think we were very successful in Iraq when General McChrystal put in place the counterinsurgency strategy in Iraq and started working with the Sunni tribal leaders. We fundamentally changed the shift in the focus and our ability to be successful in Iraq. Afghanistan is a different place. Whether that same strategy will work or not, still we'll have to wait and see. But I think the most important question right now is, will the president give the general, who he has said is the general that I believe can successfully wage this war, will he now give that general the resources that general is asking for?
Let's go to calls for you.
Okay.
Beginning with a call from Los Gatos, California. Sue, Republican line. You're on the air.
Yes, I thank you very much, Mr. Hoekstra, for what you do. I have a chief concern, first about Afghanistan, and a quick comment after that if you could answer. The first one about Afghanistan is our boys are in harm's way, and they're undermanned there, and we have a president who can't make a decision, and this is based on his total lack of any executive office experience. And my second quick thing is that I'm very nervous about the shadow government that he is creating with all these czars that aren't even subject to any scrutiny, any congressional oversight. Thank you.
Okay. Regarding your first issue, I firmly believe in the mission in Afghanistan. The president now is going to be challenged from a leadership standpoint. He's going to have to clearly establish the predicate as to why we need to be successful in Afghanistan. He has to establish that predicate and present it and lead on that issue to the American people. Then what he needs to do is he needs to make sure that he gives our troops, our young men and women in Afghanistan, the tools to do the job successfully. Right now, I'm very concerned that they don't have the tools to do the job successfully. This administration has attacked, from my standpoint, viciously attacked the intelligence community, and they've made some decisions in terms of how they're going to interrogate and gather intelligence in Afghanistan that I believe will mean that when our men and women go out on patrol in Afghanistan, they're not going to have the best intelligence, and they're not going to have the intelligence that they need to keep themselves safe. I'm also concerned that there's the evolving change in rules of engagement. There's reports on an attack that took place on September 8, where our soldiers asked for artillery and air support, and they did not receive it. And one of the reasons they didn't receive it is they said that there were civilians in the area. Our troops responded and said, yeah, it's the civilians in the area that are bringing the munitions to the folks that are shooting at us. And if we are going to ask our men and women to go into war, we need to support them politically. We need to give them the tools to do the job, and that means the right rules of engagement, and it means the right intelligence, and it means the right number of troops. In regards to the czars, I think the president is finding out, like the rest of America, we'd be a whole lot better off if these czars went through a vetting process with the Senate so that we knew who they were, we knew what their responsibilities were, and that they could be held accountable by Congress and that we would have the oversight.
Vigo, Ohio, this is Mike on our Democrats line. You're on for Congressman Hoekstra.
Congressman, General McChrystal there, he was a two-star general when he tried to cover up Pat Tillman's death as a war hero when we found out later that his own Army Rangers shot him in the face 3 times and several times in his bulletproof vest because he was an agnostic. He stood up to this war. He was going to be, talking about that later on. and seems like somebody tried to cover that up, and General McChrystal was promoted to a 3-star general after that cover-up. And then Hermit Karzai, was he working for Unocal Oil along with Condoleezza Rice down in Texas back in the 90s? Now, this is all a Disney production. Answer my question.
I don't know if Hamid Karzai was working with Condi Rice for that oil company in the 1990s or not. I know that the facts around the Tillman case have been pretty well documented and publicized. General McChrystal is the general that President Bush selected to lead the counterinsurgency effort in Iraq. That strategy worked, and it works well. General McChrystal did special operations and those types of things in Iraq, worked very, very successfully. President Obama is the one that has tasked General McChrystal with developing the strategy, implementing the strategy, and successfully executing the strategy in Afghanistan. Now, if we've got questions about General McChrystal, it's one of the reasons that Republican and Democrat leaders have asked General McChrystal to come back to Washington, D.C., to lay out his strategy for Afghanistan, the resources that he needs, the benchmarks that he's going to establish. So we've asked the Pentagon to have General McChrystal come back so that we can take a measure of the man and we can take a measure of the strategy as we move forward. Hopefully the Pentagon, hopefully Secretary of Defense Gates will allow General McChrystal to come back to Washington, D.C. and testify in front of Congress, just like General Petraeus and Ambassador Crocker did a few years ago about Iraq.
Dennis Blair, the Director of National Intelligence, gave the committee a closed-door briefing on Afghanistan and Pakistan yesterday. What about that is available for public consumption?
Well, none of it.
There must be some part of it that you can tell us about.
Well, I mean, it was it's a classified briefing, and so the intent is to keep that information classified.
Sure.
But I think it was the information that we received was very, very consistent with what the McChrystal report that was leaked over the weekend, and that things are extremely tough in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. The challenge is now. The time to act is now, recognizing that if the president makes the decision to move more troops into Afghanistan, and if we take a greater effort in Pakistan, it's going to take a series of months before those troops actually get on the ground, 5 to 7 months.
There you go. There was a for public consumption version. React to this Twitter message from a viewer named Monty. How come that is the most powerful military in the world, we could not control a few people living in caves using primitive arms?
The Twitter may have answered the question themselves. It's a very, very different type of insurgency. We have the air power, we've got the technology and all of those types of things. If we were fighting a war against a country that had the same kind of strategy that we might have in place, they'd be we'd probably be very successful. This is an enemy that has adapted. They are using the terrain to their advantage. They are using the local population to their advantage. They're not using technology. Or very limited. As far as we can tell, a number of years ago, bin Laden, someone leaked that we were listening in on a satellite phone, and as far as we can tell, he's never gone back to electronic communications again. So it is an enemy that has identified our strengths, and what they have now done is they have adapted their strategy to take advantage of our vulnerabilities. One of the things that as we change our rules of engagement and say, we are going to limit our airstrikes and our use of artillery to only those instances where there are no civilians present, guess what? Every battle in Afghanistan will now have civilians present, because they know that we've made the conscious decision we will not use our superior technological capability in those kinds of environments because we want to protect civilians.
Here's a variation on the theme from a viewer named Jan Ness by Twitter. How can we unite a country full of warlords and religious factions when we can't unite our own people?
Well, I think, as I said when we were talking about Afghanistan, I think it's very, very difficult, and I'm not sure that I expect that at the end of this process, Afghanistan will be united under a president and under a regime coming out of Kabul. What we want to do is we want to make sure that the government in the country that we leave is a country that will not provide a safe haven for the Taliban or for Al-Qaeda. I think the second part is we are not united on policy, all right? But America's united in that, we need to focus on, sometimes we need to just step back and focus on the things that do unite us. I mean, we have an election. Some of us, may or may not like the outcomes, but we accept the outcomes. And, the building over here to my left and behind you, the Capitol of the United States on January 20, every 4 years, we have a spectacular event where we witness the peaceful transfer of power from one president to the next president. When we have a change in the power of Congress from one party to the other, it happens peacefully. When we have a 250,000 or 500,000 people come here either protesting or advocating for one issue or another, it is done peacefully. So we have a lot more in common, and what we share is we may not agree on the issues, but what we do is we recognize everybody's ability and freedom to articulate and to articulate and push their issues forward and to press their point of view.
Marietta, Georgia, our next viewer call for Congressman Pete Hoekstra. Joseph, go ahead, please.
Yes. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Good morning.
Okay, yes. My comment would be that, that if we look at the Middle East, that part of the earth is like, that seems like that's where our main focus to be at is in the Middle East. And if we understand geographical areas, the Middle East, whoever controls the Middle East controls the world. You know what I'm saying? So we understand what wars and stuff, wars are basically just, a front for control and for profit. And we understand that most of the wars that we're fighting are the wars that basically are wars that for Israel. You know what I'm saying? And we losing our soldiers, losing our, military people, for wars for Israel. So my question for you would be, I would like just a clear answer, straight cut answer. What do the Taliban or any other terrorists want from Americans to make them stop doing what we consider so-called attacking America or bombing America? What do the Taliban want to make them stop?
Thank you, Joseph.
Well, I'm not sure that the Taliban, that there's anything that we can do that will encourage radical jihadists, Al-Qaeda, or the Taliban to stop. I think the Al-Qaeda, radical jihadists have made it very, very clear. Their objective is to overthrow and destroy the United States of America. And anything short of that is a mission that has not been completed from their perspective. And they're willing, from my point of view, they're willing to use a lot of different things to make that happen. They attacked us on 9/11. They've tried to attack us a number of other times since then, and we've seen within the last 7 or 10 days, and you and I will learn a lot more about the specifics of, how many people were involved, what they were planning on doing, and how close they were to actually executing additional attacks on the United States. And so it is, I'm not sure that there are things that we can do in the United States that if we did it, bin Laden and the leadership at Al-Qaeda would say, look, they've changed. They are no longer our enemy. They are our friends. We will no longer attack them. I think that negotiating or appeasing Al-Qaeda is something that cannot be done and would not achieve the kind of results that perhaps that you're implying that if we did it, they would back off.
We are listening to Congressman Pete Hoekstra of Michigan, the top Republican on the House Intelligence Committee. Next question for him is from Detroit. This is Robert, Republican line. You're on, Robert.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Mr. Hoekstra, I'm actually from Hamtramck, which I know you're very familiar with.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyway, my question is, well, more of a statement than a question. We live in the greatest country in the world, in the world. All you have to do is go out. Every day when I go out, I'm a vet. I was injured in the war in Vietnam, and I get taken care of at the VA hospitals here in Detroit. But what I'm trying to say is that the United States is the greatest country in the world, and still you have all these people, including our President of the United States, going before the United Nations and apologizing. For what? Yeah. Can you explain to me what he apologized for?
Well,
I mean, the greatest country in the world.
No, I mean, I think that, Robert, number one, appreciate and thank you for your service to our country. America, hey, we make mistakes. But for the president to go to Cairo, for the president to go to Europe, or for the president to go in front of the UN and spend a significant amount of his time apologizing for the things that we have done, or the quote unquote the mistakes that we have made, is wrong. I mean, what happened? We should be very, very proud of what we've done over the last 8 years. We freed 60 million people in Afghanistan and Iraq from the tyranny of two brutal regimes. We can feel good about accomplishing that. We can feel good about our men and women in the service. For everyone that has been publicly identified for breaking the rules, whether it's at Abu Ghraib or whether it's in interrogations and those types of things, there are hundreds of U.S. soldiers and military folks who can make this country proud for what they did and what they sacrificed for as they removed Saddam and as they removed the Taliban from Afghanistan. And so, but those are the things that we need, that this president in America needs to talk about, recognizing and say, sure, we've made some mistakes, but to spend most of the time dwelling on the mistakes that we've made without talking about the positive things that we have done, that is a mistake, from my perspective, a mistake in leadership.
This is Peter, Democrats line in Drums, Pennsylvania. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. Good morning, Peter.
Hey, good morning.
My name is Peter, too. I'm just calling in the fact that we did have Al-Qaeda and bin Laden trapped in the Tora Bora Mountains back in 2002 and 2003, and we pulled our troops out, went into Iraq to start a war that wasn't really necessary until we got rid of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And nobody condemned President Bush on the Republican side. Nobody said what things he did wrong and why he did that. And why. Now all of a sudden Obama is trying to solve the problem that was created, and now he's getting all kind of Republicans saying, why is he doing this? Why don't he do that? And all the Republicans after Bush at the time to explain why we left that Al-Qaeda and Taliban loose in Afghanistan to go into Iraq. That war should have been settled 4 years ago. I am a Korean veteran, and I said we left Korea, the same situation we have now in Afghanistan. We didn't finish the job. And please explain to me why that wasn't brought up by the Republicans against Bush.
I think exactly, Peter, what you'll find out is that as this president has moved forward in Afghanistan, it's been the Republicans and some Democrats that have stood with the president when the president forcefully came out in March and said, we need to be successful in Afghanistan, and we're going to mount a counterinsurgency strategy. It was Republicans. We did stand by this president. When the president said that, he was going to commit 21,000 additional troops to Afghanistan, I think you'll find that Republicans did stand by the president and supported that decision. And I think you'll find that if the president moves forward and implements the McChrystal plan, the McChrystal doctrine that's been outlined, and the request for the things that he needs, I think if the president embraces the McChrystal report and comes to Congress and asks for the resources that General McChrystal has asked for, and then also clearly indicates that he will provide our troops with the rules of engagement, the intelligence, and the resources that they need to do the job successfully, I think that you will find Republicans and hopefully Democrats will support this president, support our troops and their mission. because I think the other thing that our troops are looking for, and that the American people are looking for, is that they want us as political leaders to come together on a strategy that will keep America safe and that we will be united on. The American people start to lose faith when we start bickering on this issue in Washington, D.C. If the president will lead on Afghanistan, I think that you will find Republicans and Democrats that will hold the president accountable, which is our job in Congress. But at the same time, I think you may be surprised by the level of support that he will get from Republicans and Democrats, and hopefully from the American people, to carry this mission forward and to accomplish it successfully.
What is your reaction to the administration's announcement that it will not seek a review of detention policy? Here is the story in the Washington Post this morning. Obama administration has decided not to seek legislation to establish a new system of preventive detention to hold terrorism suspects, and will instead rely on the 2001 congressional resolution authorizing military force against al-Qaeda and the Taliban to continue to detain people indefinitely and without charge, according to administration officials.
No, I think I'll have to go back and analyze that more specifically, but I think what they've said is that the policy that we've had in place for the last 7 years, from their perspective, is perfectly legal, it's perfectly appropriate, and more importantly, they're saying it's working and it's helping keeping America safe. So I would think that I'll be supportive of the direction that they're taking in that area.
Last viewer call for you, Mr. Hoekstra from Houston. This is Bob on the independent line. Good morning, Bob. Are you there? Oops, I have to push the button. My fault. Bob, go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm here.
Hey, good morning.
Thank you, C-SPAN. I watch your show every single day.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, I'm an old guy, and I kind of remember World War II when we invaded France and Normandy, and within 11 months we defeated the entire German army and freed all of Western Europe. Now, that's my statement. I think this war in Afghanistan has the exact wrong premise. If I were a terrorist planning an attack on the United States, I'd be in Pakistan, where all my other friends are. I have free reign to do whatever I want to do. So fighting a war in Afghanistan has absolutely nothing to do with protecting this country from terrorists. I think we should stop the war and address the issue of terrorism the way President Obama is thinking about doing, exactly as he's thinking of doing, and readdressing what is the situation and what should the strategy be. Thank you very much, and I'd enjoy your comments.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the president thought about this. The president is the one that outlined a strategy in March and said that, I'm going to embrace a counterinsurgency strategy in Afghanistan. I think at the same time the president said we're going to work on putting more resources or working more closely with the folks in Pakistan to make sure that that border region of Afghanistan and Pakistan, that we are controlling both of those areas, and then also recognizing that he needs to eliminate or minimize other potential sanctuaries, whether it's in Somalia or Yemen or other parts of northern Africa. And so if the president wants to now go back and reevaluate the strategy that he put in place 6 months ago, I think that's the prerogative of the president, and at certain points in time, you need to go back and reevaluate the strategy and these types of things. But then what the president needs to do, and he hasn't done this yet, what is the predicate? Why do we have to win in Afghanistan or Pakistan? How are we going to be successful? Maybe the president needs to step one step further back and say, where do we need to be successful? Then he needs to lay out the strategies to make that happen. And then he has to come to Congress and the American people and ask for the resources to make that happen. And I think that's what we're expecting from the president in the next week or two.
As far as we understand the timetable, then the Crystal strategy will be delivered formally to the Pentagon by the end of the week. This is already Thursday, so that will be soon. White House will receive it later on, and we should know the president's decision, as you say, within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that is not new. The president, I would think, was anticipating this report, and I'm surprised actually now that, I mean, it's actually a little strange that the McChrystal request for troops is going to come to the Pentagon. It's going to be held at the Pentagon for a period of time until the president makes a decision on the strategy. You would think that the president would want to know the exact number of troops that General McChrystal wants to execute the current strategy as he's evaluating various alternatives. But, you know, the key thing now, the president needs to lead. And when will he lead on Afghanistan? He didn't lead yesterday. Yesterday was a great opportunity for him to present a compelling case to a world audience about why not only for America it was important to win in Afghanistan and Pakistan, why it was important for us to defeat terrorism, but he could have made the case that this is something that we should all be united on. I've met with Gaddafi. Okay, Gaddafi wants to defeat radical jihadists. This is something that in many places, you know, we can come together on. It could have been a common theme, and he could have asked for the world's commitment and for the world to come together in defeating radicalism and terrorism, and he missed that opportunity yesterday.
Mr. Hoekstra, thank you as always for being at the table.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break.